terrible sadness in our community at the loss of Jill. It is, it's almost irreconcilable that someone with such great vitality and energy and strength and generosity of spirit has left our midst, but hopefully those all become a wonderful legacy and memory for us as we move on from here. My God and God of all who have gone before us, author of life and death, we turn to you at this time of grief. We turn to you and trust that Jill be granted perfect rest in your sheltering presence. We seek for her to pass gently from this world to the world to come, and that you, dear God, embrace her with love. We know that much was left unfinished in her life, yet we know also the good she tried to do. May all of her acts of goodness continue to give meaning to our lives, and may any errors in her life be forgiven. Into your hand his spirit committed, redeem it, O God of mercy and of truth. One of my favorite poems was written by Samuel Ullman called Youth. And I think it certainly embodies the character of this loving person whom we cherish today. Youth is not a time of life, it is a state of mind. It is not a matter of rosy cheeks, red lips, supple knees. It is a matter of the will, a quality of the imagination, a vigor of the emotions. It is the freshness of the deep springs of life. Youth means a temperamental predominance of courage over timidity of the appetite, for adventures over the love of ease. And this often exists in a person who is 60 more than someone who is only 20. Nobody grows old merely by a number of years. We grow old by deserting our ideals. Years may wrinkle the skin, but to give up enthusiasm wrinkles the soul. Worry, fear, self-distrust bows the heart, turns the spirit back to dust. Whether 60 or 16, there is in every human being a heart that is lured of wonder, the unfailing childlike appetite of what's next, and the joy of the game of living. In the center of your heart and my heart, there is a wireless station. So long as it receives messages of hope, cheer, courage, and power from human beings and from the infinite God, so long are we young. And when the aerials are down and your spirit is covered with the snows of cynicism and the ice of pessimism, then you are grown old, even at the age of 20. But as long as your aerials are up to catch those waves of optimism, there is hope you may die young, even at the age of 80. Friends, mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love each other. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of life is too complex, too magnificent to be memorialized by endless suffering. The gifts of the Spirit our loved one gave to us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in these dark hours, we know that some of her light, some of her warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage in the fullness of time and the healing presence. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me. Your laugh has lifted me. Your word was a gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love. What death has touched. O Lord our God, Hear our voice and the longings of our heart. We who are created in your image come before you at this time with our hurts, our fears, our dreams, our anxieties and disappointments, our grief, our guilt, our anger, our depression. We come before you at this moment seeking your presence, hoping that we do not struggle alone, hoping to feel your love, your encouragement, and your comfort. May we together feel your presence and draw closer together in understanding and caring. Praised are you, eternal our God, who is present to us when human hearts draw near one to another. We are so fortunate to live in Tucson, Arizona. I know Jill arrived here reluctantly with her beloved husband, Herc, but I know that over time, the Tucson community and our environment embraced her as she embraced us. And one of the more beautiful aspects of living in this desert, it's really hardly a desert, the way we depict it, like the Sahara or something like that. But one of the great benefits of being here in Tucson is surrounded by these beautiful mountains. And the psalmist in ancient Israel looked up to the mountains. And when he was having difficulty with his life, when he was struggling with his faith, he looked up to the mountains and was assured of God's enduring presence. And so we look up to the mountains here in Tucson, the Catalinas, especially to the north. And we know that our source of help is with us as the mountains are with us each and every day. Esainai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim ba'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains, and what is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, and your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. It is often a struggle in this modern age to be both a good wife and a good mother. And I know this was so true of our beloved Jill. And so we turn to chapter 31 of Proverbs, Eshet Chayil. A good wife who can find. Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and nothing shall he lack. She renders him good and not evil all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She's robed in strength and dignity and cheerfully faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband too and praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands, wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. And then finally, we turn to the 23rd Psalm. Rabbi Weizenbaum and I, blessed memory, Rabbi Weizenbaum and I had a class of Christians and Jews here in the sanctuary many years ago. And I don't remember what the topic was, but the topic of the 23rd Psalm came up. And we asked our students, are you aware of the 23rd Psalm? And everyone raised their hand. And we asked them, where do you hear the 23rd Psalm? And they said, at a funeral. And then we asked them the tricky question, why is it read? No one really knew for sure. And there are many answers. But I want to share with you two, one from Rabbi Weizenbaum, and then one I think from myself, I'm not sure. You can all tell me if I'm lying later and that it came from a more revered source. So Rabbi Weizenbaum looked to them and said, we have in our text, being in the valley of the shadow of death. And of course, if we're in the valley, then we know for certain that our loved one is in God's divine light. So that gives us some reassurance. And then at the end, which you'll hear this morning, the translation that you've been comfortable with for decades, for a long time, is incorrect. At the very end, we oftentimes read, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of God forever. But in actuality, the Hebrew is goodness and mercy, or goodness and grace, will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of God forever. What does that mean? Well, the meaning can be found in Jill's life for sure. That she slowed down. I know she didn't slow down. I mean, I knew her well enough. She never slowed down. But I got to tell you, what was so amazing for me, and I'm sure others have experienced, when she walked in the room, everything stopped, right? You knew that smile and wisdom was going to come from her lips. Everything stopped. So the suggestion is that if we slow down enough, goodness and mercy and grace will be a part of who we are. And then that will embrace other people who come in our midst. So the 23rd Psalm is not a reflection of the past of Jill's life. Certainly it is, but it's a hope for your future, that you all slow down and let goodness and mercy pursue you, become part of you, so you can have the grace and the goodness that she had in her life as well. Mizmor LaDavid Adonai Roi Lo Iksar, Binodesha Yarbitseni, Amei Minochot Yanachalini Na Shvi Yoshvev, Yanchedi V'Magleit Tzedek Laman Shemo. Gam Ki Elek Begeit Salmavet Lo Irara Ki Atay Madi, Shiftacha Mishantecha Hemayin Achamuni, Taroch Lefanai Shochan Neged Sorai, Deshanta V'Shemen Roshi Kosi Revayai, Achtov V'Chesed Yardafuni Kol Yamei Chayai, V'Shavti B'Veit Adonai Lo Orech Yamim. Adonai is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Adonai lets me lie down in green meadows, leads me beside peaceful waters, and renews my strength. You bring my wandering spirit back and guide me along paths of justice and truth for the sake of your name. And even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will not be afraid, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me with protection. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Certainly goodness and mercy will pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall live in the house of God forever. So at this time, we're going to allow two friends, two colleagues to share with us their memories of our beloved Jill, and then the family would like to as well. I opened up my computer. I have a terrible app that Amy Letterman, it's her fault, that Amy Letterman told me to open up after her father died. It's called We Croak. So there is this idea that if you reflect on your death 5 times a day, you're going to live a better life. So it's interesting, this morning came this quote from Ursula Le Guin: the story is the only boat for sailing in the river of time. Story is the only boat for sailing in the river of time. So we're going to invite Ken Light, the former CEO of Tucson JCC, and then Carlos Hernandez, the president and CEO of Jewish Family and Children's Service, to share their story.
When Herc asked me to say a few words today, I was both humbled and intimidated. Humbled because surely there are others among us who could deliver more eloquent thoughts, and intimidated because even though Jill and I worked together for over 13 years and I got to know her quite well, there aren't enough hours in the day nor days in the week to capture in words the complexity of this amazing woman. She and Herc were involved in many facets of the community, from the educational to the artistic, from the cultural to the societal. Too much great stuff and too little time. I'm going to focus on just a few of the observations I had of Jill while we were together at the J. I was her supervisor, but that's really a misnomer. So, supervising Jill was sort of like herding cats. I'd suggest a direction and then I'd get out of the way because Jill was going to do what Jill was going to do. And occasionally she embraced my suggestions, but she always took the path that she deemed most appropriate. Words that come to mind when I think of Jill include passionate and compassionate, dedicated, loving, determined. Boy, was she determined. Caring, bright, cheerful, articulate, and generous. And I'm sure all of us could add more words to this list. As the director of early childhood, she continually amazed me with her knowledge of each and every child in her care. She knew each of their names, their likes, their dislikes, their idiosyncrasies, their families. And I must add, however, that she didn't always know the name of the parents. She knew that this was Sarah's mom or Philip's dad. And I'd ask her, by the way, Jill, who is that? That's Rebecca's mom. When Jill got her doctorate, she proudly came into my office to show me the diploma. And what excited her the most, it seemed to me, wasn't that she had accomplished this remarkable achievement, but that it now gave her a little more credibility in her lobbying efforts on behalf of children when it came to local and state agencies that cared for the young in our community. She was a tireless advocate for those needing a voice, and she used her position, her education, and her passion to maximum advantage. She truly believed that there was an inherent dignity in human beings, that every human being deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And she did this most evidently with children. She was all about the kids. And if not every day, surely several times a week, I would find her in my office as she lobbied not only for the children, but for the staff in her department as well. One of the most interesting dichotomies in my relationship with Jill demonstrates the modest complexity of this woman. Not once in the entire time that I worked with Jill did I ever have an inkling of her varied interests outside of early childhood or know of her generous spirit philanthropically. I knew she was generous and caring because it wasn't uncommon for her to pay for an early childhood AIDS educational expenses out of her own pocket or to buy food from her own purse for kids who came to school hungry. But the true nature of her communal involvement remained veiled behind a high rung on Maimonides' ladder of tzedakah, that of giving anonymously. It was only after Jill's tenure at the J that we learned of her being so much more than the wonderful early childhood Jill. Once she left the employ of the J, she became a volunteer extraordinaire and a supporter and a giver, and not just to early childhood, but to all aspects of the J. She served on the board of directors and on various committees and task forces. And I'm not sure most of us really fully appreciate the extent of the philanthropic side of Jill and Herc. I surely didn't while she worked for me, but became very evident after she left. And from her guiding passion with the splash park to their personal interest in sculpture, which can now be seen in the sculpture garden as it was realized, Jill was there. She gave of her time, her expertise, her financial resources to drive home projects that were near and dear to her. And as I said earlier, these magnificent contributions are just the ones that most evident at the J. There were many other examples of giving her work, her wealth, and her wisdom elsewhere in the community, including to Jewish Family and Children's Service, where she served as the president, and to the Jewish Federation, to name just a couple. You know, they say it's not how much knowledge one has, nor how much money that touches people. In the words of Maya Angelou, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Jill Rosenzweig made everyone with whom she came into contact, child and an adult, co-worker, supervisor, supervisee alike, she made them all feel just a little better after their encounter with her. And that, my friends, is the true essence of Eshe Chayil, a woman of valor. May she rest in peace and may her memory be for a blessing.
Good morning, everyone. You know, a famous writer once said, "We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give." If that is true, then Jill Rosenzweig made a great life. She was the most giving person that I have ever known. Jill joined the board of directors at JFCS in 2004. From 2012 to 2014, she served as the board chair. And in 2017, she became honorary board member. Jill's contribution to JFCS cannot be overstated. She was a steadfast supporter of all people in need and relied on her expertise in early childhood education to ensure that JFCS services reached the most vulnerable children. Jill's compassion for those in need was not limited to only children. She was a major advocate for increasing our counseling and community services to Jewish and non-Jewish people throughout Tucson. She was instrumental in revitalizing the agency after some difficult years and steered us toward the ambitious path of growth that we continue along today. On a personal note, I have witnessed firsthand the warmth and passion that Jill shared every day. Jill hired me in 2014 to lead JFCS, so she holds a special place in my heart as she welcomed me and my family to JFCS and to this wonderful community. We will remember her devotion to the Jewish and broader community, her skills and contributions, and her confidence in our ability to help others. I would like on behalf of the board of directors, and on behalf of the entire staff of JFCS, to extend our deepest condolences to you, Herc, Sandra, Michael, and the rest of your family. Jill will remain in our hearts forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to invite Peggy Warman on Zoom to share her story with us.
Hi, I'd like to say a few words about my Aunt Jill. In the last years of her life, when I used to sit with my Nana, Jill's mom, and my mom's mom, Nana would look at two portraits that she had on her wall of Jill and my mother. And she would say, "Such beautiful daughters I have." And I would say, "Yes, Nana, they are beautiful daughters." And she would say, "And they did so well for themselves." That was my Nana. Jill, I can just hear you coming in and saying, "Hi, Pegula. Yes, she would call me this even when I was 55 years old. She always had a way of making me feel loved and comfortable whenever I would see her, and I will miss hearing her voice. She looked just like my mother, and she seemed just like my mother, but she was not my mother. They looked more and more alike as they grew older, and I think they grew closer. I guess that's how life is. I was so impressed one day when I went to work with Jill. I got to visit her and see how she ran everything like a whirlwind, and hearing everyone call her Miss Jill. Seeing what she did was a big reason that I was inspired to go back to graduate school later in life. I also loved the way that Jill cooked. I love to cook, and both of my grandmothers and my mom were great cooks. But when I cooked with Jill for a couple holidays, she was much more casual about cooking. She wasn't one that necessarily followed the recipe. She taught me how to enjoy cooking and just trust your gut. Oh, just throw this in. Oh, just take a taste. See what you think. Just go by the cuff. Cooking this way lets me relax and really enjoy the process. And I think of Jill frequently when I do this. I have been extremely lucky to have close relationships with my mother's sister, Jill, and her family, and my father's sister, Harriet, and her family. I have wonderful memories of everybody. And even recently, I have had to turn to Jill for some guidance, and she readily offered it and offered any help that she could. Jill, I'd like to thank you for your kindness, for always being there, for setting a wonderful example of a woman with a career, and for your free spirit. I love you and I will miss you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. For those of you who don't remember me or can't tell just from looking at me, I'm Jill's daughter. Reserved, soft-spoken, subtle, and inefficient are words that will never be used to describe my mom. She was truly a force that defied boundaries professionally, creatively, socially, charitably, and even at times maternally. She had high expectations in all areas of her life and encouraged everyone she interacted with to meet those expectations with her. My mom embraced the women's movement in the 1970s and avidly pursued her career in education, despite concerns from her own mother that her children would suffer from her divided attention. I was a latchkey kid before that became a common term, but I have to admit, I relished that hour or so before I would hear my mom's car pull into the driveway because it was the only time I could sneak TV. Once home, my mother had more than enough energy and attention to provide us with homework help, schlep us to ice skating lessons and hockey practices, art classes, brownies, play dates, although they weren't called play dates then, you just went to someone's house to play, and a multitude of other extracurricular activities. Despite my grandmother's concerns, I don't remember a time when my mother was too busy with work or anything else not to attend to our family. On top of all her coordinating and schlepping, she always had a home-cooked dinner prepared and ready to serve by 6:30. There was no dinner on the couch in front of the TV at the Rosenzweigs. We sat down as a family every weeknight. Weekends were the exception, when Mike and I would be allowed to eat hot dogs and watch the Dukes of Hazzard with the babysitter, as my parents went out to the symphony or the theater or dinner with friends. Sunday evenings, the four of us would always head out for Chinese food or pick up dinner from Bill's House of Pizza. My mom had strict rules concerning sweets. So for desserts, we were allowed 2 Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies, which I believe was actually the legal limit for longer than I care to admit. She was also adamant that we drink a full glass of milk with dinner, which I despised. I think she was very overly optimistic that it would increase my growth. And on pizza Sundays, Mike and I enjoyed the bizarre privilege of being allowed to mix a splash of grape soda with our milk, which for some reason I thought was delicious. Our pantry was always filled with homemade jams and homemade watermelon rind pickles, which of course I didn't appreciate since all the other kids got Smucker's grape jelly. However, it was always exciting to be sent out with buckets to pick copious amounts of blackberries and raspberries in the summer and watch my mom boil 3 or 4 large pots of jelly jars at a time to make jam. Oftentimes, she and her lifetime friend Cynthia Pill would work together, turning our kitchen into a major production site. Her creative endeavors did not stop at making jam. My mom was a talented seamstress and sewed me dresses when I was little and all of our Halloween costumes. When I finally got a canopy bed, she sewed the bedspread and matching canopy. One summer, she used an antique sewing machine, which was operated with a manual foot pedal, to make period dresses for dolls of the March Sisters after I was really into and had read Little Women. My mom impeccably balanced her career and her family life, often allowing the two to overlap, which I am sure contributed a great deal to my own career path, as well as my sense of responsibility to help others. When my school vacations differed from hers, I would come to work with her and teach in her kindergarten classrooms. She was a special education teacher and my father, a child psychiatrist. I was well versed in all the potential diagnoses and their abbreviated labels for children with learning and behavior issues. So much so that I remember shocking my own 5th grade teachers by interrupting the conversation they assumed went over my head and interjecting with my own opinions that Devante was probably not trying to disobey. He was just hyperactive and impulsive. And although my classmate David was probably MR, my other classmate Marie was just LD. When we moved to Tucson and my mom became the director of early childhood education, director of education at the Arizona Children's Home, she would have students close to my own age accompany us on horseback riding trips or other outings, explaining that these were kids who did not have opportunities to do many special things with their own families. These were some of the foundational experiences which led me to pursue a career in special education. There were times, however, when her concerns for her students became convoluted with my sense of fashion in the 80s. In 8th grade, when I came into the kitchen wearing a blue bandana around my forehead in the style of something akin to Flashdance, Madonna, or maybe the Karate Kid, my mom was very concerned that my headwear might be indicative of some sort of gang activity. I assured her that the Crips and Bloods who permeated Orange Grove Junior High were not recruiting 4'10" bat mitzvah students who listened to Wham! While my mom and I would continue to have our differences over the years, she was always a source of support and inspiration. I am sure I've inherited my affinity for babies, kids, dogs, and chocolate from her. She loved spending time with her grandchildren, and anyone who has ever been in her elevator can attest to that. While losing her last week was a sudden shock, she was never one to do things in the way you might expect. And it is a comfort to know that she passed quickly as she was getting ready to go to the theater, which she loved. Although she will be very much missed, her presence is one that will last a lifetime for everyone who knew her and loved her.
So now we're going to hear from 3 of Sandy's, her 3 children. And I know that Michael and Luciana's kids are not here. They're a little bit young, but maybe with Michael's remarks, he'll share, their connection with their grandmother as well. So we have Ben Schulman on Zoom, followed by Kayla, who is here, and then Dora will follow Kayla.
In January, over Christmas break, Grandma gave me this bracelet. I've worn it every day since then, and I was so excited to tell Grandma how I've been doing so. I didn't imagine her eyes would light up like a kid on Christmas, but I hoped that she would somehow be a bit proud of me, proud of herself, proud that something she valued would be valued by her grandchild, that the lens she looked at life through would be shared by others, even if it was just a little bit. I never got to tell her that I haven't stopped wearing this bracelet. When I was 2, I stuck my finger between those little holes in the oven. Grandma saw this and quickly yanked my finger out, taking more than a little bit of skin with it. I'm sure that I screamed and cried, and I still have the scar. But guess what? I don't stick my fingers in the holes in the oven anymore. One of the things that's been hardest about Grandma's death isn't that I have any regrets about the time I did spend with her, but that I will never be able to tell her that I haven't stopped wearing my bracelet, or show her how I've taken her lessons, like not sticking your fingers in ovens, to heart. I'm here, even though I am saying it in front of you all here, this finality, that I won't ever be able to talk to her again, is not something I have fully realized. Part of me still expects to wake up tomorrow morning and be able to hear her say, "Oh, Benjamin Bopple," in the simultaneously endearing and judgy tone that only she could pull off. However, the fact that I will never speak to her again doesn't mean that Grandma won't continue to have new impacts on my life. Being the sole inheritor of countless memories and conversations I've had with her, memories that were once the shared property of us both, feels more like a burden than anything else right now. That's a feeling that I imagine is being felt by many people here, but I don't think there's anything I would trade it for. I've never been one to understand the sentiment of carrying a part of someone with you. I still don't understand that. But I know that I will find myself remembering the things she said to me and using them to shape my outlook on new topics that may not even exist yet. I will hold all of the memories I have to Grandma close to me forever, and I will keep all of the lessons I have learned from her close to me as well. So I think I can take a little bit of solace on such a sad day, knowing that there is still more to experience from what she has given to me. And I can appreciate all the memories I've had a privilege of sharing with her. I hope you can too.
Hi, I'm Kayla. Um, I oh, I remember when I was in second grade and I was around 7 years old. My grandma called me up and asked what I wanted for Hanukkah. Being 7, I said a red electric guitar because I wanted to be just like Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks. My mom overheard the talk of an electric guitar and quickly intervened. She told my grandma in a stern voice, "Absolutely not. I do not want her getting an electric guitar since she has never taken a guitar lesson before, and I do not want Kayla blasting it all around the house." A few weeks later, Hanukkah came, and my grandparents came to visit. My brother and sister had just opened their presents, and it was my turn. My grandma said that my gift was really big, so she had to hide it in the basement. A few minutes later, I saw my grandma and grandpa walking up the stairs carrying a big red acoustic guitar. Several years later, my 11th birthday was coming up, and my grandma asked me what I wanted. I jokingly said an electric guitar just to see how my mom would react. My mom rolled her eyes at me because I had never learned how to play the acoustic guitar and instead had opted for drum lessons. A few weeks later, my birthday came, and resting on the front porch was a huge package with the word Gibson written on it in big black letters. I opened the box, and lo and behold, I found an electric guitar. I turned to my mom, and we just laughed because this was such a Grandma Jill thing to do. To this day, I do not know how to play either guitar, although they do look very cool in my bedroom. However, I did teach myself how to play the ukulele my grandma got me last year for Hanukkah. When I was younger, I used to get so excited whenever my grandparents would visit because they would always bring us all sorts of presents from all the countries they visited. Now I realize that the real gift wasn't the souvenirs, but being able to spend time with them. Although she did love giving me lots of gifts, she gave me so many more memories. And it's not the gifts that I'm going to remember her by, but the time we spent together.
And now we invite Dora on Zoom.
Should I pin myself? Okay. Kind of wish I had gone first because it's kind of hard to follow both of those speeches. I've always said that Grandma was the icon of this family. The other day, I told my science teacher that she was the Regina George of the elderly in Tucson, Arizona. Grandma did what Grandma wanted to, and I love that about her. Over winter break, my family and I went up to Arizona to visit Grandma and Grandpa. While I was there, I said, "Grandma, you know I tell all my friends that I aspire to be like you when I'm old. I tell them that you're the icon of this family." She said, "The what? What do you mean icon?" I said, "You're iconic. How many other grandmas do you know that carry purses made of real alpaca fur? Or travel the world in their 70s? She said, "I guess you do have a pretty cool grandma." And she was right. I have the coolest grandma. Grandma came to every single performance of mine that she could. Musicals, plays, dance festivals, performing arts showcases at school. And when she couldn't fly into DC anymore, she watched every single performance of mine that was live streamed and even had me email all of my audition tapes to her. Any chance she got to watch me sing, dance, or act, she would. I will always remember the times we had together in Martha's Vineyard, California, Arizona, or just hanging out at our home enjoying holidays and family time together. I'm going to miss her very much, but I will try my hardest to carry the things she instilled in me, such as her love for travel, her confidence, her love of family and friends, and her service to the community, her ability to stay true to herself, and her sense of fashion for the rest of my life.
Last two stories, we have Mike and then Herc.
Thank you everyone for being here today, giving up a part of your Friday as we remember my mom, Jill. I'm Mike. I'm Jill's youngest and only son. I grew up here in Tucson, so it's really nice to see so many people here, so many familiar faces. People may not be so familiar, to pay respects to my mom. I know she had a tremendous impact on the community, as well as all of you personally as a friend. And thank you everyone on Zoom for joining as well from around the country, even maybe around the world, from Israel. For those of you who don't know me, I was always a bit of a late bloomer compared to my friends. I have my high school friends have kids entering college, but I have two young boys. Mateos is now 4, Leonardo is 9. And I'm sure many of you have heard about them because Jill adored her grandchildren. She adored all kids, but especially her grandchildren. I never had the pleasure of joining the Marjan group, but I can imagine her raving about her wonderful and perfect grandchildren, and maybe on occasion her own children, to the point of eye rolling among other players. I know how lucky I am to have been her son. As a new parent myself, it's natural, I think, to reflect on my own upbringing and how I was raised. And I do that a lot, especially this past week. Just bear with me for a few minutes. I'd like to share some reflections that I've had recently. So not too long ago, I attended a seminar through my son Leonardo's baseball league regarding positive coaching, positive parenting, particularly with regard to sports and achievement. The message conveyed through this seminar was primarily about fostering a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. This is a concept that's been researched and written about by Carol Dweck. The messaging was the focus in parenting and in coaching on hard work and efforts rather than on your child's talents or fine performance of the moment. For example, if you tell your child what a great baseball player he is after making a good play or having a great game, when he strikes out or fails in the moment, he will think he's no longer a great baseball player and maybe be reluctant to push or challenge himself in the future because only great baseball players succeed. A mindset focused on one's fixed abilities can foster a fixed mindset. Interestingly, the theory goes, showering our own children with compliments and telling children how great they are at this, that, or the other can lead to this detrimental fixed mindset that success comes from innate talents rather than hard work and perseverance. Rather, a better course is to focus on how proud we are of our children's hard work and efforts to learn new things so they will not be intimidated by challenges they face in the future, whether it's baseball, academics, or even relationships. A growth mindset will help our children thrive and see failure not as a sign of their lack of ability or a strike against them as a person, but rather as a challenge to overcome and an opportunity to learn. So it occurs to me as I look back at my own childhood, as I reflect on my own life and who I've become as an adult, my mom and my dad struck the balance of fostering this growth mindset with absolute and unconditional love and support remarkably well. As you all know, and as we talked about here today, Jill was a powerhouse, a force to be reckoned with, extremely bright, hardworking, accomplished woman. After graduating from Dana Hall, one of the best all-girls schools in Boston, she attended Simmons College, where she earned her bachelor's in education. She later attended Columbia University's Teachers College in Manhattan, where she earned a master's degree in special education. It was in Manhattan where she met my dad, who was completing his own medical training. My mother was as committed to education and helping children in need as anyone on this planet. She worked in New York City's 600 schools, one of the nation's toughest school districts, both professionally and physically. She worked with a group of inner city kids with tremendous intellectual as well as socioeconomic challenges. They were tough kids from the streets of New York. I remember when I was in elementary school, my mother and I would play and wrestle together, if you can imagine. She would demonstrate on me the restraining technique she learned she needed to apply in the classroom for some of her most challenging and sometimes aggressive students. Despite her toughness, the kids in New York, they loved my mom, as most of her students did. So much, in fact, that they prohibited her from walking to the subway alone for fear that she would get mugged. She never had a problem. She never got mugged. She was as committed to the profession of teaching and to the well-being of children as anyone in the field has ever been. So my parents were married in 1966, and soon after, my father joined the Air Force, and they were stationed on a base in Bitburg, Germany. While there, the school on base lacked a special education program, so my mother started one, and she ran it during their time in service. Mind you, she did this with a newborn baby, my sister Sandy, who was born in Germany during this time. They left Europe in 1970 and returned to my mom's hometown of Boston, where I was born. She worked in the classroom with special needs throughout my childhood. In fact, I don't remember a time during my early childhood when my mom was not working, but I also don't remember when she was unavailable to me, schlepping me from activity to activity, including ice hockey, as Sandy had mentioned, which as a parent myself now, I look back at with awe. Lots of equipment, skates to lace up and to untie, shoulder pads, hockey shorts, suspenders, not to mention a cold ice rink to hang out in and watch your kid. No chance of rainouts or cancellations for bad weather. So we moved to Arizona in 1982, and Jill continued to challenge herself professionally. While navigating adolescence for me and my sister, she never looked for an easy job, even during challenging times at home. She worked with children who came from the most challenging of circumstances, often caring for kids with severe learning disabilities from tragically broken homes. Like the Arizona Children's Home. Where she worked as a principal. She never stopped challenging herself through her life and her career. She became an assistant principal in the public school system while simultaneously working on her PhD. She went on to the JCC to develop one of the best early childhood programs in Tucson, if not the entire country. She completed her PhD in education while at the JCC, completing her dissertation in the development of gender and racial bias in early childhood. And that teaching bias can and should be avoided. She was actually, a woman ahead of her time as we look at the reckoning we're experiencing today about the way we teach our kids. She actually received her PhD on the same day that I received my medical degree from the University of Arizona. It was a wonderful, amazing day. We were in caps and gowns together. I was proud of her. She was proud of me, and I knew it. I always knew how proud she was of me, even if she didn't say it. And that's a parent's goal, to be sure their kids know how much they love them and how proud they are. Despite my mother's academic excellence and tremendous accomplishments, her message to me as a son, I think, was somewhat unique. She rarely showered me with compliments. And I remember her telling me when I was young, look, your parents are not very bright people. You didn't inherit a lot of brains. If you want to get anywhere in this world, you're going to have to work hard. Yet at the same time, she never seemed to flinch, worry, or show signs of embarrassment when I would earnestly answer her friends asking me what I wanted to do when I grew up. I want to pump gas, I would answer, so I can rest between cars. She loved that story. Well, I eventually grew out of that phase and thought a more academic professional route would serve me better. But I never forgot the lessons she taught me. Lessons of the importance of hard work, persistence, gratitude, and that failure is not the end, but an opportunity to learn and grow. She supported and loved me through all my struggles and failures. Her love and belief in me gave me the confidence to never give up, never lose faith in myself. Whether I failed on a spelling test in 3rd grade, whether I struggled making friends after moving to Arizona from Boston, or whether trying to get into medical school as an adult. I reflect on my own life today, and I feel so fortunate in the path that I forged with the lessons learned from my mom and my dad. I love the joy and satisfaction I get from my job as an oncologist, helping others facing difficult challenges, just as my mom felt from helping kids in need. I love my wife. I love my 2 kids. I still kind of feel like a kid, but less now that my mother's gone. I can honestly say I've never been happier than I am today with a life that I've created for myself. And I hope to share the same lessons with my kids that my parents taught me, because those messages have brought me such happiness and joy as an adult. I said goodbye to my mom last week, holding her hand as she took her last breaths. I thanked her for everything she did for me and everything she taught me to build my life, to build the life for myself that I love so much. It's hard to say goodbye to someone you love. I always knew that. But I learned something this past week. It's harder to say goodbye to somebody who loved you. Goodbye, Mom, and thank you. As successful as you were professionally, you were just as successful as a parent. And in my heart, I know you felt that was your most important job. I would try hard to do as good by my kids as you did for me, with life lessons and unconditional, unquestionable love.
least I forget. As I'm proud to do these days, I'm told. Let me first thank you all for being here. Thank you for loving Jill as she loved all of you, and for being so kind and so generous to her throughout her life. I also have to apologize because, as you can see, despite the sadness of the occasion, my children have not lost their sense of humor. As Jill approached and would have been her 80th Passover and her 40th in Tucson, it occurred to me that she was always devoted to the curious child, the child who asks the 4 questions. But today the questions are different. The first question is, how do we evaluate a life? Was that life lived fully? Was it full of productive activity, fun and pleasure, love and friendship? Did one live up to one's potential, set and accomplish goals, make the most of a limited time we all have on the face of this planet? And finally, did we fulfill our faith's most important mission, Tikkun Olam, to make and leave the world a better place? Jill's life was full indeed, and Jill was more full of life than anyone I have ever known. She not only loved people, she loved everything: music, art, theater, good company, good food, good ice cream, and most of all, good friends and family. I was always awed by what a wonderful friend she was. She not only kept in contact with long-term friends, but was incredibly faithful and supportive and generous and kind when her friends had troubles of their own. Was Jill productive? She served on so many boards that I often told her she could easily build an ark. For Jill, meetings were never just for talk. They're for getting things done. Whether it be for preschoolers at the JCC, immigrants and mentally ill at the JFCS, art lovers at the Sculpture Garden, music aficionados at the Desert Song Festival, Jill was a mover and shaker. She had opinions, fresh ideas, purpose, and a voice. Jill was never passive or shy. But did Jill have any fun? Many of you played bridge or mahjong with Jill on a regular basis. We joined others at the symphony, the opera, chamber music, the School of Dance, ATC, the Invisible Theater, Arizona Repertory Theater, Broadway shows. We traveled throughout Europe, Asia, Africa, and even Papua New Guinea. She was a first-class supporter of free enterprise system. That is to say, she loved to shop. Jill collected shoes, canes, orchids, purses, dogs. Most of all, she collected and displayed pictures of her children and her grandchildren on the kitchen sink, on the refrigerator, in the bedrooms, in the halls, in the bathrooms, and in our personal rogues gallery, the elevator. Family was never far from Jill's sight, heart, and mind. Did she fulfill the commitment to Tikkun Olam? Well, it wasn't so much a commitment for Jill. It was a lifestyle. She changed the lives of literally hundreds of children through her teaching, administration, and understanding and love. She changed the lives of acquaintances, colleagues, board members, friends, families, and needless to say, me. She made your life better, and she made my life the best. My beautiful 15-year-old daughter, Kayla, recently reminded me of a poem that I had written for Jill several years ago, even though Jill didn't always like it. And my father advised me not to marry a princess. She'll make you do dishes, both washes and rinses. She'll make you wear emeralds and diamonds so green. So I took his advice and I married a queen. Jill was a real queen, smart, funny, beautiful, kind, and regal. She was and is the queen of my heart.
As I reflect on Jill and my family's relationship with her, and in this moment that was filled with laughter and filled with reminders of how Jill touched our lives, one of the things that came to my mind this week was there is never time enough to live. We live in a world that is unfair when it comes to time. There are some who have lived a full and gentle life, and then a fate beyond one's comprehension takes from them their mind, their health, and the time left is one left for care and love and support of family and friends. Then there are those who, in the midst of their vigor, striving to accomplish more, to give more, love more, are taken suddenly from our midst. For those like Jill, it is one of unfinished love, the end of happiness we once received. The gifts both to be given and to be expected are left unwrapped on the mantle of the mind. For lives too long and those too short, there is no fairness in our world. Despite our complaint, there is a timelessness to Jill's life now. Through our sorrow, we are witness to her living in timelessness. We know in this moment that there is a difference between holding a hand and sharing a soul. We know now that love does not mean security. Sadly, our future means that there will be no tomorrow for someone whom we have loved. Though we are sorrowful that Jill will not be on the other end of the phone or in our presence tomorrow, let us be thankful for the broken places in our heart and in our lives at this moment. It's only through such brokenness that we may truly touch one another, and only through touching one another that the world may be healed. As Jill healed our world in so many ways by her deeds, by her calming voice, her gentle touch, and that smile we will never forget. Today we give thanks for our brokenness because Jill spent time with us. A scholar once said that our ancestor Sarah in the Torah, that at the time of her death, she was initiated into eternal life. In fact, with her, eternal life was created. When some people die, they leave little behind. When Sarah died, people remembered to this very day her wisdom, her deeds, her devotion to family, friends, and strangers alike. All of that survives as an eternal memory and challenge to the Jewish people to be like Sarah and to leave that kind of legacy of memories. So Jill's legacy is for each of you, for you to personally define. Your memories of her will help you face the challenges of your daily living. May you strive to make this world a little better, as Jill did, by being a bit more generous, giving as you are able according to the blessings that God has bestowed upon each of you, by helping a child or being a better friend. May her journey be swift. May she find peace that she deserves. Zikrona livracha. Her memory certainly is a blessing to us all. I ask that you all now rise for the El Malei Rachamim. This is the prayer seeking that Jill's soul be brought up into God's divine presence. And by the way, Sandy, within the last couple of days, discovered Jill's Hebrew name, which some had forgotten. You will not be surprised that it was bracha. It was a blessing. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechonaha, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazirihim, et nishmat bracha bat Avraham v'fruma shalacha le'olama began Eden tehei menuchata ana ba'al harachamim hastireha beseter kenafecha le'olamihim utror bitzorachim et nishmata Adonai hu nechalata v'tanuach b'shalom amishkava v'nomahar omein. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Jill Rosenzweig, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy and grace, we beseech you and remember all the worthy and righteous deeds she performed in the land of the living. May your soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal is her portion, and may she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. So please be seated. We are going to continue from here to the interment at East Lawn Palms Cemetery on Grant, and then that'll be followed by a meal of condolence at the J. And the family has invited you to attend both the interment and the meal of condolence. And at the meal of condolence, there will be an opportunity for those who wish to share their personal stories about Jill. Now, I didn't ask some of you this question ahead of time, so I'm going to embarrass myself. I'd like to invite Linda Rogoff and Sherry Belkin, Linda Tamarkin, Eleanor Jack, Carol Levi, and Lenore Sutup to come up here for a moment. I know I didn't talk to you ahead of time, so it's embarrassing. So it's on me. So to bring your masks, if you've got your masks. And Robin Sherman, will you come forward too? So we're going to proceed from here to East Lawn, and then you can follow the hearse on the way. Yes, would it be? So why don't you tell them? So we're going to ask the community to please rise. The family will follow the casket to the hearse, and then you're invited to go into your cars to join us.